Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hi, I'm Soehyun Baek. I am 22 years old. I am currently a third-year undergraduate student in University of Melbourne. I'm a Bachelor of Science student, and my major is biotechnology. So my love for science begins since I was very little. I've always been interested in watching different organisms, watching documentaries since I was like a very young kid. So I remember when I was little, I was playing in the playground, also with my friends, but I really enjoyed observing ants or like drawing animals like dolphins, or after school, after kindergarten, just hanging around the living room, watching penguin documentaries and dinosaurs. Yeah, I was really like more of a National Geography kind of a kid. Then my interest for biology and specifically biochemistry and microbiology really sparked as I moved to Sydney. So there was this program where our school selected a bunch of kids to get a chance to look at onion cells in the microscope, and I was lucky enough to be chosen as one of them, which this may not seem like a big deal, but back in primary school, it was fascinating to see different parts of the cells, their organelles, and this really, I think, sparked my interest and determination to pursue my career in the field that is similar to what I have experienced back when I was a kid. And my interest didn't stop there. So I just constantly delved in deep to my interest in science as I moved to Singapore back in year 8. So as much as I like learning more about scientific knowledges, I'm also interested in learning about different fields and different cultures, different backgrounds. So while I was staying in Singapore, I decided that it would be very meaningful for me to learn something in deep and also be able to apply my theoretical knowledge into diverse fields. And that really drive me to choose my major as biotechnology in my uni, so that I would be able to equip the skills that I can, transfer my domain knowledge into different domains later in my career. So that is one of my visions and dreams as well after I graduate. Yeah.
I'm really curious to know, what are the major things that you have learned so far that have really shaped your worldview in terms of where you're going after you qualify? What are your aspirations? What are your dreams?
Oh, so currently being an undergraduate student, I am keeping my options open in general, but so far the things that I have learned in my unis are categorized into like a few big chunks, such as biochemistry experiments. So that could be things like gel electrophoresis, purification, and PCR. I think many people would be familiar with what that is. Maybe they don't really know what it is, but they have experienced it because of the pandemic in recent times. Or it could also, I also learned things like bioinformatics. More specifically, I learned how to utilize the databases and softwares that has to do with protein 3D model building or genetic sequencing, what kind of mutations it may have. So those are the things that I am learning at the moment. And I would hopefully in the future would like to contribute to something similar that has happened during the pandemic. So when COVID hit, lots of the mRNA vaccines were developed within a year, which may not seem like a big deal, but in the science field, it is phenomenal because it usually takes about a few years or maybe like a decade to come up with a single vaccine that could tackle a certain type of a pandemic or epidemic. And the reason why it happened so fast, like this vaccine development process, was because of the increasing development, advancement in biotechnology techniques, I personally think. So hopefully in the future, I would be able to contribute to developing solutions and possibly customize medicines or vaccines for each and every patients in the future. So yeah, that's one of my visions.
I love that. Now, describe to us what was your experience being in South Korea with the pandemic. We all experienced it rather differently in different parts of the world. I was in New Zealand at the time. Then I got stuck in Melbourne towards the end of the pandemic. Just take us through what that was like for you in South Korea, observing the pandemic unfolding.
So I was supposed to come to Melbourne in mid 2020s. That was when my uni was supposed to start, and then the pandemic started around the early 2020s. So I actually had to postpone one semester so that I thought I could possibly safely come back to Australia and start afresh, get to know new people from the start. And obviously that didn't happen. The border was closed until early 2022. So I basically spent my freshman year stuck in my room, going through Zoom meetings and virtual practical classes in my room in Korea, which was a bizarre experiences because I was just looking forward to so many events and getting to know new people, new cultures as my uni starts. But that was just like the tip of the iceberg of my pandemic experiences because everything was changing so drastically. One of the things that I personally think that was very distinct from the pandemic resolution protocol in Korea compared to other countries was the use of masks and public hospitals. So when COVID hit, South Korea was really quick to respond to the pandemic because of their response and experiences a few years back for the MERS virus. So what South Korea did to tackle or at least prevent the widespread of the virus was to dedicate a certain day of the week so that people can visit their local hospitals or pharmacies to get like a certain amount of masks once every week. Because remember back in the early 2020 and 2021, there was like a mass shortage of masks. And I remember watching the world news and everywhere around the world, people were just like so chaotic and terrified to get the adequate supply of masks, and there was just not possible to be provided to everyone. And I believe that policy was very effective, in my opinion, because while it was a difficult time for everyone during the pandemic, at least from what I know, no one really suffered from the supply of masks or any basic hygiene equipments for them to, protect themselves from the virus. And relatively speaking, everyone was just, well, just following the protocols that the government provided us.
That's really good. Now, what is the role of information technology in your fields, do you think? I know you've recently completed a course in AI. Take us through AI technology in the biosciences.
Well, so that AI course that I did was from the online course, but if you allow me to share some of my limited insights, the domain data for biology field is just huge. It's just vast, especially, for example, if you think about the DNA sequences, it's just endless. Thousands or like millions of DNA sequences would maybe needed to just produce one protein. And within the same chromosome, just different zones could be needed to produce a certain thing that's possible. And it's just impossible for humans to calculate every single one of it because the combination is infinite and there's no way we can just categorize every single thing. And that's when information technology comes in handy. And that's why biotechnology or bioinformatics fields are just becoming a new trend these days because computation methods are just so useful in categorizing and also deducing the possible protein or genetic combinations as well as mutations for a certain like sequence pattern. And it's really helpful in producing things like vaccines. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier, mRNA vaccines for COVID-19 has benefited a lot using information technologies to find the possible match for the viral sequence of COVID-19 virus and coming up with the most optimum match of vaccines that can tackle it. Yeah, so information technology is projected to be really useful.
Yeah, it's amazing how the technology is evolving as well. I know that there was a lot of collaboration between scientists during the pandemic across borders to, come up with the solutions. And that was one of the other reasons why things happened as quickly as they did. Now, let's talk a little bit about your experience being an immigrant here to Australia. Fortunately, there's a lot of students who are coming in from Asia, from Japan, from Korea, from China. Have you experienced anything so far where you felt like you were alone, you were a minority? Give us your experience as being a migrant to Australia.
Um, so I think I can compare the two times I was in Australia when I was back in, when I was 9 year old, like a little kid who spoke little English back in 2009, and now being a uni student who is, I would say, quite fluent. I don't really have that problem speaking in English to anyone. And my two
Yes.
experiences are quite different. So back when I was little, K-pop wasn't a thing. YouTube wasn't a thing. So there was no way for both me and the locals here in Australia to get to experience different cultures and be aware of how different cultural backgrounds actually can be. So I
Yes.
remember people just asking me questions like, is Korea even a country? Like, where are you really from? And they wouldn't actually think that that is like a rude questions to ask. And I just remember like holding world maps around me and just like pointing to Korea, like this is where I'm from. Like you need to just learn. Yeah, that was quite fun. That was quite interesting. But now, currently, I feel like people are more aware of the different cultures, different backgrounds, and people are generally more interested in learning and venturing out of their comfort zones, just communicating with people who are coming from the community that they are not from. Like me myself,
Yes.
have lots of friends coming from countries that I haven't even visited or like heard of. And I just love like communicating and sharing insights of different, cultural viewpoints and social issues. It's just so interesting. I think that's one of the quirks of being, migrating in the other cultural community.
Love it. So you've settled in really well. You've made lots of friends, and you plan to stay as long as you can to finish your degree. What will happen after your degree is finished? Are you going to try and work here in Australia, or are you planning to go back home?
Well, I'm just discussing with my families whether to get a job in Korea or Australia. I think my options are open, and I feel like I need to explore both of them because you don't really know where the right opportunity would come about. But eventually, I would like to go out and explore living in different countries in the future because I've always been interested in learning about new cultures and learning about different things and broadening my perspectives really makes me happy. And I feel like that's one of the reasons that can live in like, with fun and enjoyment.
I love that. It is great to leave your own country and go to somewhere else. They say that your mind expands much, much wider when you travel than when you stay in one place. So, what were the quirks, the interesting things that kind of hit you when you first got to Australia? Where would you say you experienced your culture shock, so to speak? Give us a bit of that experience when you
Well, when I
compare
first landed
South Korea
in
and
Mhm.
Australia.
Well, when I first arrived in Australia back when I was 9, everything was a cultural shock because back then, while being a documentary girl that I was, I didn't even know what a kangaroo was. So I remember just landing in the airport because I come from a metropolitan city, Seoul, and all I've seen was concrete jungles, just buildings, cement. Then as I landed in Sydney, there was just so much greenery, so much trees, and it was just so shocking to me. Your natural environment may not seem like evoking a cultural shock to anyone, but it just seems like it just gives you an impression that you're not in your homeland anymore. You're in somewhere different, and you need to expect everything to be different.
I love that. But connecting with your fellow students, that was a fairly easy thing to do, right? Because there's so many students from all over the world here in Australia.
I guess it's both easy and difficult at the same time because there are so many as you said, like Asian students coming to Australia. It's easy to
Yes.
connect to those who share the same background as me because we just connect. But if you are looking to build a connection with probably the locals or other immigrants but who are not from the same background as you, that could be quite challenging because you're not sure where to start. You're not really sure how to approach them because some of the gestures or like nuances may be different. So I
Okay.
guess, yeah. if you want to forge a bond with different people in Australia, I guess it's good to have a open mind and just talk to them, just spend a little bit more time and effort to get to know them, then you may find a really valuable connection, I think.
I love that. Yeah, you're right. It would be easier to connect with people who come from a similar background, but it's a very diverse group of students who come into Australia on an annual basis. So you would really feel that the differences from the different cultures. So, what is the university doing to accommodate overseas students when you come? Were there any provisions? Did you see like you were being taken into consideration based on your background? Or were you just thrown into a pool with all the other students and just expected to cope?
Well, in terms of like university events, I think uni has provided both events for bonding with students from your similar background and also getting to bond with people from diverse background as well. So university has a lot of societies and communities for a certain cultural background. For example, there's a uni male Korean society, I believe. I'm not part of it, but lots of Koreans just go there when they just join uni and just, get to know a bunch of Korean people, and you can just feel the sense of home because it's just really challenging to separate from your parents and friends, leave your homeland. I think that's a really supportive um, event or like a community people can join. Or also, you can take advantage of the same society, but go to different societies, maybe Japanese or German, Spanish, anywhere, and just get to know people from that background and just immerse yourself in somewhere fresh and new. Then you'll get to learn something new. But in terms of like class lessons, while the teachers and tutors are really supportive of everyone coming from different backgrounds, they wouldn't really necessarily, try to make you bond with other people because that's a learning environment. And it's, I think,
Right.
up to the students to, venture out, get some courage, just talk to the classmates sitting next to you. So I guess from the events that the uni arrange, you can use the skills that you equip from there. Just be more confident in the classrooms, and you can make more friends.
So, if I can take you back to when you started uni and you were green, you had no idea what was going to happen. If there is another student from overseas who's listening to this podcast, who's considering coming to Australia, what three nuggets of wisdom would you give them to make life easier when they finally get here?
Mm, I would say join different communities. Go to the student webpage, and you would get to see like myriads of choices of different clubs and systems you're interested in. It may not necessarily be related to your academics or your major. Just join one. You don't really have to pressure yourself to commit to one. Go there, just have fun, make new friends. That's my first, I guess, nuggets of knowledge. The second one is just talk to people. No one would judge you. No one would think that you're weird. Even if you're not that good in speaking English, I feel like communication depends on confidence. Just relaxing rather than how much grammar mistakes you make, how much vocab that you know. I don't even know that much vocab, and I'm pretty sure I make like dozens of grammatical mistakes every minute. I remember when I first came to Melbourne on my first month, I was making friends in the lift. Literally. I was like talking to people and be like, "Hi, do you want to be friends with me?" And it seems pretty weird, but I remember no one said no. Everyone was just interested in the fact that I was just talking to them, and people were just like, "Yeah, sure, I can be your friend. Like, you're interesting." It's really easy to get to know people if you believe that it will be, if you believe in yourself, which kind of relates to my third tip is to believe in yourself. it seems so cliche to say that, but there would be some rocky times and there would be some, gloomy days. You may feel homesick. You may just want to give up everything and just go home. But I just want everyone to know that that's perfectly normal to feel that. I used to feel like if I'm discouraged by whatever that happens to me, I'm not doing good enough, especially because it was my decision to go overseas and just get out of my comfort zone. But that's just a part of life. Facing challenges and enduring challenges is a part of life. And as long as you just know what you're doing, as long as you're doing maybe possibly even like the bare minimum of what you should be doing, I feel like that's enough. And while it may seem like you're not even gaining anything, maybe you didn't even make that many friends, or like your academic success is not that successful. At the end of the day, when you look back in retrospective, it's gonna be a meaningful time spending overseas. You're gonna be okay.
I love that. That's some really good advice there. And I take it during your holidays, during your breaks, are you going back to Korea, or are you looking for intern type jobs? What do you do during the vacations?
I have already had some working experiences, like working in pharmacy or like working as a project consultant early this year. So since this is my last semester, I wouldn't be going overseas during the holidays. But yeah, I would just like to focus more on exploring different options, the things that I could take after I graduate.
Fantastic. Well, I wish you luck with your studies, and I hope that I will reconnect with you once you've got a job. So please stay in touch with me, especially if you do stay in Australia, or even when you go back. This should be a friendship, a relationship that continues long after you are gone. Would love to know what you're going to do with your life going forwards. So thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is connecting all kinds of people, young and old, from all over the world. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. That's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely stay connected.